Nationally, home sales are way down. But in California, home sales are up. Buyers are back. But when you dig into the crosstabs of the most recent data, it's clear that some California regions are raging while others are dead. Where are home sales heating up in California and where are they falling off a cliff? That's what we're digging into in today's California Real Estate Roundup, brought to you by Blueprint. Look, it's stupid to pay an agent 2.5% when you're the one doing all the work, finding that perfect home yourself on Redfin or Zillow or Realtor.com. So don't pay 2.5%. Save thousands of dollars when you buy a home with Blueprint. Learn more at buywithblueprint.com. Now let's get into the data. And we're going to start by looking at national numbers. This is the most recent print from the National Association of Realtors, looking at a summary of this month's existing home sales statistics. And as you can see, existing home sales are down to a seasonally adjusted annualized rate of 3.84 million homes. Now, this is an anemic amount of home sales. This is down 3.5% from this month last year. And we haven't seen this low a level of existing home sales since 2010, which, just to contextualize that for you, keep in mind that in 2010, the unemployment rate was skyrocketing, home prices were dropping off a cliff, and nobody wanted to buy a home. And right now, that's how many homes we're selling. In fact, I'm going to grab a straight edge so I can draw a line here. Common knowledge has been that the 4 million mark is about the bottom of the U.S. housing market. That demand is such that we basically never sell less than 4 million homes. And right now, we are well under 4 million. Now we're going to hop over to the California numbers. These are the California housing market update numbers from the California Association of Realtors. And what I want to show you is that in California, home sales are up 5.1% over last year. California is showing a seasonally adjusted annualized rate of sales of 253,010 homes. That means that at the rate we're selling homes this month, during the whole year, we should sell about 250,000 homes. And we're going to dig into the numbers behind this to really understand what's happening in California. But just to hit the highlights right now, the median sales price this month fell to $868,150. That's down from last month, but up 2.9% from this month last year. The unsold inventory index is at 3.6 months. That's up almost 30% from this month a year ago. And median days on market is at 24 days. That's up 33% from this month a year ago. So let's dig into this sales number a little deeper to really understand what's happening in California right now. So now we're looking at California sales numbers going all the way back to January 2005. We're here at the very end at about 250,000. And as you can see, that's better than we were doing this time last year, again by 5.1%, but sales are still well lower than the pre-pandemic norms that we're used to. In California, during the Great Recession, sales bottomed out right in the middle of 2007. And so the level that we're at now for the state is right around where we were at the beginning of 2008. So sales are rebounding, but they're still depressed. And when we divide up sales by price points, we see that actually more expensive homes are what's driving the increase in sales, and less expensive homes are seeing sales declines. And these positive numbers here, plus 3%, 6%, 2%, and 8% for homes in the price range of $500,000 to $2 million plus, these numbers are actually more moderate than last month's price gains. So that's why we see that sales growth at the top end of the market slowed down. It slowed down relative to last month, but still the higher end of the market is what's pushing sales numbers up. And that makes sense in a market that's so expensive and getting more expensive. There are just fewer homes available at these very low price points. In fact, we can see that the share of the market that has homes that are less than $500,000 shrunk from a year ago, from 26% of the market to now 23% of the market. Whereas the $500,000 to $1 million price point range, that piece of the market grew from 43 to 44%, and the top end of the market, $1 million homes plus, that also grew from 32% to 33%. Now, this chart actually demonstrates really well the moderation in sales at the high end of the market. This graph breaks the California housing market up into 7 segments, the most expensive being purple lines. Those are homes that sold for $2 million or more. Then we have these green lines. Those are homes that sold for $1 to $2 million. Light blue is $250,000 to $1 million. And what we see is that over the past year, sales of high-end homes really escalated and have now started to de-escalate. You can see that in the very tall purple lines, the slightly less tall green lines, the slightly less tall blue lines, etc. So 2 months ago, I was alarmed about the huge number of sales in the very high end of the market. And now that that trend is reversing, I am personally beginning to calm down. Something else I'm happy to see is that the share of $1 million home sales declined for the 4th straight month. And this graph is really eye-opening to me. And let me translate this for you. Pre-pandemic, so this line is the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, home sales in California for homes that cost less than $500,000 accounted for about 45% of the market. And homes sold that cost $1 million or more accounted for about 17% of the housing market. Once the pandemic struck, these numbers inverted themselves. Homes at the bottom of the market shrank significantly, and homes at the top of the market grew significantly. And at the point of greatest inversion, $1 million plus homes made up about 35% of the California housing market, and homes that cost $500,000 or less made up about 25% of the California housing market. Thankfully, since that recent peak inversion, the trend has started to revert to the norm. So you can see that $1 million home sales are headed down, and lower price point home sales are headed up. Right now, almost 33% of the California housing market is homes that cost over $1 million, and just over 23% of the California housing market is constituted by homes that cost less than $500,000. Now, we're never going to get back to this picture here, this pre-COVID picture, where homes that cost less than $500,000 make up 45% of the California housing market. That stock of homes is going away. California is just becoming too expensive. But what I hope to see is $1 million homes find a new low level and $500,000 homes find a new high level as we reach some kind of new equilibrium. All right, so I want to jump back to the statewide numbers again to show you that statewide home sales are up 5.1%. But that's not uniform across the state. This is the average of some pretty disparate numbers. When you actually look at the state region by region, you see that some areas are popping off and some areas are dead. So now let's take a look at California by region to see how your neck of the woods is doing. All right, and we start in Southern California, where existing home sales is only up 1.1% year over year. The unsold inventory index, the median days on market, and the sale price to list price ratio is actually right at the statewide averages. The median price of a home in SoCal is $850,000. So Southern California is not as active as the rest of the state, but sales are not depressed relative to last year. We can at least say that. Moving on. Now we're looking at the Central Coast, and the Central Coast has seen a decrease in home sales from last year of 1.9%. There's a little more inventory than across the state. The market's moving a little faster than across the state, and the sale price to list price ratio is a little lower than the statewide average. The median price of a home in the Central Coast is $993,250, which is up 4.6% from last year. That's pretty good. But again, existing sales in the Central Coast are down. The Central Valley is also not looking too good, with existing sales down 1.6% from last year. Price of a median home here is $500,000. There's slightly less inventory than across the state. It's a slightly faster market, and the sale price to list price ratio is slightly lower than the statewide average. Now we get to the Bay Area, and this is where the market is still hot. Sales are up 5.1% from this time last year. That's the statewide average. The median price of a home is $1.266 million, which is actually down 2.6% from a year ago. And the Bay Area is tight on inventory, has a very fast market, and the sale price to list price ratio is just over the statewide average. The Bay Area is back, and I've experienced this hot Bay Area market myself. I recently made an offer for a client. The list price was $2 million. We thought we were going in super strong at 2.3, home sold at 2.5. And then lastly, we get to the far north, or check this out, existing home sales are up 7.2% over last year. The far north of California is where the action is at. The median sale price of a home here is $379,500, and that's actually down 1.5% from a year ago, despite how hot sales are. There's quite a bit of inventory still on the market. The market is quite slow relative to the statewide average, and the sale price to the list price ratio is also quite low relative to the statewide average. Looking at the number of sales that are happening in this part of California, I expect the median home price to start showing positive numbers year over year. And I would suggest if you live in the far north of California, now is probably a pretty good time to buy. And these two graphs really bring together the slides we just saw. We see on the right side here, home sales growth by region, year over year and month over month. Again, we have Southern California with a small amount of growth at 1.1%. We have the San Francisco Bay Area that's really grown in sales from last year at 5.1%. And the far north is up 7.2%. Dragging California down in terms of sales is the Central Coast at negative 1.9, the Central Valley at negative 1.6, and other counties at negative 5.9. And the pie chart up here shows us the market share of each region. Southern California is, of course, the biggest chunk of the California housing market at 44%. Then we have the Central Valley, then the SF Bay Area, then the Central Coast, then the far north, and then other counties. All right, now let's dig a little deeper into pricing numbers. All right, we're looking at the median home price of a house in California. We're all the way up here at $868,000. That's down from last month, which we would expect this time of year. Prices tend to descend in the fall and winter until they bottom out around February and then grow again as the spring housing season starts. But we are up year over year, 2.9%. Now, what I like about this graph is that it shows us that despite the fact that the pandemic really upended the housing market and created a huge amount of appreciation in a short amount of time, we've begun to get back to the trend since the Great Recession. I'm going to grab my straight edge again here so I can draw a nice straight line. I'd say something like that reflects how prices have moved since they bottomed out after the Great Recession. And as you can see, at the height of the pandemic, we really diverged quite a bit over the long trend line, and now we are getting closer to it. So for my money, people, especially people on YouTube who are calling for a massive housing crash to make up for all the appreciation that we saw in 2020 and 2021, aren't taking into consideration just the natural growth of housing, the trend line that has existed for 12 years now. Accounting for that, home prices are only a little bit elevated over where they would be otherwise. Now we're looking at median price growth by percentile. So the 0 to 20th percentile of the California market is the least expensive 20% of homes that sold this month, whereas the 80th to 100th percentile is the 20% most expensive homes that sold in the past month. And you have the 20th to 40th percentile, the 40th to 60th percentile, and the 60th to 80th percentile. Now, the low end of the market saw the highest median price gains at 6.7%. Then we got to 2.8%, 1.2%. The 60th to 80th percentiles saw a median price decrease of 2.8%, and the 20% most expensive homes in California saw a median price decrease of 0.8%. This shows us some more market moderation like we were seeing earlier in the sales numbers for the most expensive properties. The most expensive properties in California aren't selling quite as hotly as they used to. The prices are beginning to recede from what they used to be, and the least expensive homes in California are getting a lot of price appreciation. Now, that's great if you bought an inexpensive home in the past year or two or three. It's rough for first-time buyers who are trying to enter the market via an inexpensive home because as these prices go up, these inexpensive homes begin to become not so inexpensive. Over here on the right, the top 20% of California homes are broken down even further into percentiles of 80 to 85, 86 to 90, 91 to 95, and 96 to 100. And what's interesting is that the largest median price declines were in the 91st to 95th percentile with price declines of 5.5%. The share of homes sold above asking price fell to an 8-month low of 38.4%. This month last year, we were at 45.5%, and the recent pandemic peak was 72.9%. This is another sign of our moderating market as the percent of homes sold over asking price is decreasing. Now we're looking at homes sold above asking price by county, and 4 counties registered above 50% for this statistic. That's San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Alameda. On the flip side of the coin, now we're looking at reduced priced listings. The share of listings with a reduced price was 37.2%, that's right here, and the median reduction amount was 4.8%, that's right here. Now, it's interesting to me, we're always talking about how today's metrics match up to pre-pandemic metrics, and when it comes to reduced price listings, we're right about where we were in the pre-pandemic era. And perhaps the most welcome piece of news is on this slide right here. Mortgage payment growth turned negative for second consecutive time since July 2020. For the past 2 months, mortgage payment growth has been negative. So while home prices are 3.4% higher in California than they were a year ago, mortgage payments are 2.6% lower than they were 1 year ago. This, of course, is due to the fact that mortgage rates right now are a lot lower than they were 1 year ago. And hopefully this mortgage payment number continues to go down. In California, our big issue is affordability. And affordability is not determined just by price. It's determined by price and mortgage rate, because the actual cost of buying a home is not the sticker price when you buy it, it's that monthly payment. And if that monthly payment continues to fall, more Californians will be able to afford a home in California. So let's take a look at our inventory numbers to see where the housing market is headed. The unsold inventory index has reached its highest level since January 2023. Right now, there are 3.6 months of supply on the market. That brings us back to the same levels we saw in early 2023. This was just after rates doubled in the second half of 2022. So being at this relative peak indicates that we should see continued market moderation in the months ahead. Now, zooming out a bit, we're here at 3.6 months. We can see that we're at or just a little bit tighter than the kinds of inventory numbers we were seeing pre-pandemic. But if anyone is looking at this rising inventory and worrying about a crash, well, guys, this is what an inventory-driven crash looks like. During the Great Recession, the state of California topped out over 16 months of inventory on the market. So yes, we expect inventory to rise even from where it is right now, but we have a ways to go before there's enough inventory flooding the market to create any kind of meaningful crash. Active listings reached their highest level in nearly 2 years. Here we are there. And we're right about where we were in the middle of 2022 when rates were climbing and homes were flooding the market. Now, in raw numbers, our active inventory is not where we were pre-pandemic. The reason why month supply is so high is because we also have way fewer buyers right now than we did pre-pandemic times. So even though month supply is where it should be, the raw amount of inventory is depressed from where it should be. That's why the market that we're experiencing right now is kind of a tightrope. Things are so taut that if more buyers than we expect come to market, it could really drive up prices. And if suddenly more inventory comes to market, it could really drive down prices. It's an exciting time to look at real estate data. Now we're looking at the amount of new listings coming to market in California. This month, we had 21,901 new listings hit the market in the state of California. A year ago, this number was 18,872. So it's great to see more new listings coming to market, but we have to keep in mind that pre-pandemic this month, we were seeing numbers like 30,000, 26,000, 24,000. We're still not where we should be in terms of new listings coming to market. And this is one of my favorite slides of the deck. Here we're looking at active listings in each region and active sales in each region. So some of these numbers are familiar. We have our 5.1% sales growth in the San Francisco Bay Area, our 1.1% in Southern California, negative 1.6 in the Central Valley, negative 1.9 in the Central Coast, and 7.2 in the far north. But now look at how much active listings has grown in each of these regions. Active listings in the Bay Area are up 38%, in Southern California 42%, in Central Valley 36%, in the Central Coast 33%, and in the far north, well, there's so much inventory in the far north, it's good that active listings has increased only 10.5%. As you can see, the growth of active listings is way outpacing the growth of home sales in all of these regions. Does this mean the California market is about to fall off a cliff? No, there's still not enough inventory out there to indicate a crash. But the metrics are screwy enough that it's really hard to predict with accuracy exactly what's going to happen. You really have to pay attention to all of the monthly prints, and you can do that right here by subscribing and tuning in next time.